Well, another year, time to do another director, and this time we'll be discussing the films of Alfonso Cuarón. He may not be a household name, but you've likely heard of some of his films. He's only directed 7 movies so far, with his new film Roma being released very soon. But those 7 films have had some of the best direction I have ever seen in my life. Every single film is a visual marvel. He may not direct a film that often, like I said, 7 films in over 25 years, but when he does, it's sure to be something special. So let's begin this week of Cuarón with 1991's Solo con tu pareja, or Love in the Time of Hysteria in English. Solo con tu pareja. So like most first time attempts, this movie is good but not great. Although I will say it is pretty ambitious for a first directorial effort. I mean, they have some very impressive angles, they film scenes in some very high places. This film definitely has some great direction for such a small movie and showed a lot of promise. Thomas, yes that's his real name, is a womanizing sex addict who is currently sleeping with 2 women. One his boss and the other his doctor's nurse. And that is all I'm going to tell you about the plot, because going into this movie as blind as possible made it a lot more fun. I don't have much to say about this one. It's funny, it's actually surprisingly funny for a movie focusing on such unfunny subject material like infidelity. The acting is pretty good, and like I said, there is a lot of ambition with the direction. For example, Thomas gets himself into some shenanigans with both girls in 2 separate rooms, so he has to crawl on a ledge to get between them. It's really well shot, and the way it's directed, he really looks like he's up there. Some parts are also pretty uncomfortable. It never goes too far, but a few times I was actually cringing from what was on screen. In terms of flaws, there really aren't much. It does take a while to get going, and some of the characters just disappear like after the first act. And overall, it just didn't do anything mind-blowing. Like I said, it's entertaining and does what it sets out to do well, but I don't see myself seeking it out. But I am glad I saw it once. I was interested in seeing what was gonna happen. I give it a 7 out of 10. So if you can find it or want to rent it off Amazon, give it a watch. Sorry this one was so short, but I'll have more to say on his other films. And tomorrow's isn't in Spanish, so see you then. A Little Princess, probably Cuarón's most famous film that isn't one of his big blockbusters. In 1914, a young girl named Sarah, played by Lisa Matthews, is the daughter of a wealthy businessman played by Liam Cunningham. But at the start of World War I, he has to go fight in the war, as Sarah is sent to a boarding school in New York. The headmistress, Miss Minchin, played by Eleanor Braun, is a stern old bitch who makes the girls follow a bunch of stuffy rules, as Sarah tells the girls some stories and teaches them to use their imagination. And that is all I'm gonna say, because that's all I knew before watching it, and it really made the movie more exciting. This is a charming film. It's just so likable. I think even the most uptight grumpy pants would find it hard to get angry at this film. Lisa Matthews is really good. In fact, all the young actors are pretty good, but Matthews, for having such little experience, is so great as the lead. And the relationship between her and her father is very strong. When the two are forced apart, it's a genuinely heartbreaking moment. And her and the other girls have good chemistry as well.
Your mom is an angel? Of course. And so is yours. With beautiful wings of silk and a crown of baby rosebuds. And they all live together in a castle. Do you know what it's made of? Sunflowers. Hundreds of them. So bright they shine like gold. And when the angels want to go someplace, they just whistle like this.
She tells them the story of an Indian princess that's actually also pretty entertaining. And in those scenes, it's all super stylized, so much that there's this god-awful CG monster that actually kind of works with the style of the scenes. The movie looks great. When it needs to be dark and depressing, it does that well. When it needs to be bright and happy, it does that well. And it manages to juggle a bunch of different characters. There's Sarah, of course, but there's also the other girls, including Becky, a servant, the neighbors, whose son also went off to war, Amelia, Miss Milchin's sister, who wants nothing more than to just be with the milkman, and of course Miss Milchin herself. And she's probably my only gripe with this movie. I was hoping they would not make her totally evil, and it started out that way. Yeah, she was stern, but she's in charge of a school for young girls. She has to be stern. But later on, she becomes a one-note villain that only cares about money and threatens the girls. I wouldn't mind this if it were a pure fairy tale, but the movie is told more realistic, so having this bitchy headmistress cliche kinda seemed out of place. I don't want to spoil anything. If I say any more, then I would give stuff away, but let's just say that this film did get me to tear up. This movie is great. It may not be the most original film, but it does it so well. I loved watching it, and I will definitely watch it again. I give it a 9 out of 10. I can recommend this to pretty much everyone, unless you just hate sweetness, I guess. But if you don't, you'll probably get something out of it. It apparently bombed, but it has enough of a cult following, so I guess it all works out. So join me tomorrow for the only rotten movie Cuarón has done so far. See you then. Great Expectations, the classic Charles Dickens novel that I have not read, as it was not one of those books I was forced to read in school. But even having not read the book, I can tell this is a very loose adaptation, if only by the fact that it's set in modern day America. Young Finn Bell lives with his uncle, a poor fisherman in Florida, but one day he meets the niece of a wealthy shut-in named Estella. They hang out every week and eventually grow up into Ethan Hawke and Gwyneth Paltrow. They both move to New York, where Finn tries to become a painter, and well, the rest of the movie is them working out their relationship. This is the only Cuarón movie to have a rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and yeah, it's not great, but it's not bad. It's the perfect example of a movie that's well made, well acted, and tells its story fine, but gives me not much reason to watch it again. And I'll likely forget about it right after I get done editing this. But hey, if this is his worst film, that's not bad. There's not really anything about this movie I really like or really dislike. It's all just pretty neutral all the way through. I do like Finn well enough, and there's this thing with Finn befriending a killer played by Robert De Niro that actually was really interesting. At first I was a little iffy on how the movie didn't have much focus. I mean, first it's about Finn and De Niro, and then it's about Finn and Estella growing up, then it's about them going to New York, then him trying to make it. But by the end I realized it was being told like someone looking back, so yeah, it's gonna be a little clumsy. As for the problems, well, the movie looks great. Some of the editing is a bit weird. It tends to do those crossfades quite a bit, and most of the time it does not work. It's also a bit melodramatic. It's trying really hard to force out tears. It really wants to make you feel something.
You know what this is? It's my heart. And it's broken.
Also, this may just be the opinion of an uncultured 24-year-old movie geek, but Finn's paintings honestly don't look that good. I mean, they're better than anything I can do, but I just don't see how people are fawning over them. But probably the biggest problem is that the two leads just don't have that much chemistry, and I think that's mostly the fault of Estella. Now, Gwyneth Paltrow does fine, but the way the character talks, it sounds like dialogue that actually is from the 1800s, which in the right setting would be fine. But this is set in 1990s America, and she sounds really out of place. So yeah, Great Expectations isn't bad. I can actually see some people really liking it, but I don't see myself going out of my way to watch it again, and like I said, I'll likely forget about it as soon as I'm done with this review. I give it a 6 out of 10. If you think you'll like it, check it out, but if not, you're not missing much. But tomorrow we'll be going back to Spanish speaking with Why to Mama También. See you then. Why Tu Mama También, or And Your Mother Too, which is actually pretty funny if you watch the movie. We returned to Spanish-speaking films for this one, and I like this one even more than Solo con tu pareja. In fact, I really like this one. In Mexico, we follow two drinking, pot-smoking, horny blokes, Julio, played by Gael Garcia Bernal, and Tenoch, played by Diego Luna, who you may remember as Cassian Andor from Rogue One. They are asked to go to a secret beach by Luisa, played by Maribel Verdú, and the rest of the movie is basically the three traveling to this beach. There's no bad guys, not much in terms of obstacles, it's just these three traveling, and it's really, really good. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of these low on plot, more about the characters movies, but I really enjoyed this one. It's just life. I loved watching these three just grabbing some snacks and driving in their shitty car through Mexico. I found it very entertaining, and along the way, all the conflict comes from the characters. I don't want to spoil much, but let's just say these guys are some really, really horny bastards. And yeah, this movie earns the R rating. There are asses and dicks and tits all over this. The three have a natural chemistry, and I understand every decision the characters made.
¿Marido?
Sí, ¿por qué?
No, así nos llevamos. Es que es mi primo.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Yo? Tenoch.
¿Tenoch?
Sí.
¿Tú eres el enano de Tenoch? Yo te conocí cuando vine a México antes de casarme.
Ah.
Sí, eras un criajo. Y llorabas mucho porque querías un Thundercat o algo así.
Un Thundercat, sí,
¿Te
oye, qué
acuerdas?
buena memoria. ¿Qué fumas?
Gracias. Estás hecho todo un hombre, ¿eh?
Muchas gracias. Oye, ¿y qué? ¿Hace cuánto llegaron? ¿Llevan mucho aquí?
Casi un mes.
The direction is really good, the editing and way he uses the camera are excellent, and it just feels nice. The film gives off this feeling of remembrance, it just has that feeling to it. The movie's not really told in flashback or anything, but there is a narrator, so it's kind of like one of the guys is telling this story years down the road. And I really don't want to spoil anything, but the ending is not the happiest, and when it's all over, this chapter in their lives is pretty much over. It's a coming-of-age film at its best, and I absolutely love when a movie can pull that off. As for flaws, the movie does take a while to get going. It takes a while for them to actually get on the road, and if they had shortened it, I think you could have easily cut out 10 minutes from the movie. Also, the movie seems to have this political agenda. I don't know, but it's essentially taking place against the backdrop of this like political revolution. I mean, it's not really bad, but it was always a little distracting. So yeah, this movie was really good. It kind of made me want to just get a few friends and take a road trip. Although I could do without the sexual tension, we could just forget about that. I give it an 8 out of 10. If you don't mind more character stuff and aren't turned off by the subtitles or very graphic sex scenes, give it a watch. And well, next time is the big one, the movie that launched Cuarón into English-speaking public consciousness, as he gave us his take on The Boy Who Lived. See you then. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. So for those who don't know, I am a huge Harry Potter fan. It's my favorite film franchise of all time. So where does the third movie fall in my ranking of the series? Well, let's find out. It's Harry's third year, and after blowing up his Aunt Marge, inflating, not exploding, he returns to Hogwarts, but a crazed murderer named Sirius Black, played by Gary Oldman, has escaped from Azkaban prison, and is looking for Harry for reasons that are too spoiler heavy for me to get into. So the Ministry of Magic has set up their own guards around the school, those being Dementors, large cloaked beasts that suck the happiness from anybody they come in contact with, in order to capture Black. So I find when it comes to Prisoner of Azkaban, there's two camps. Those who haven't read the book think this is one of the best. Those who have read the book think it's one of the worst. I would put it in the middle. I don't like it as much as Chamber of Secrets or the Deathly Hallows movies. I'd probably put it on par with Half-Blood Prince, which I think is pretty underrated. Now, when I first saw this movie back in 2004, I was a little taken aback by how different it looked. The tone was darker, the colors were more muted. This was a huge tonal shift. But now, I love it. It kind of reminds me of a series of unfortunate events, kind of quirky, but also dark. and my god, the special effects hold up really well. When Harry is flying on Buckbeak, it really looks like he's flying. Even the later movies had problems with flight, but for some reason this and Chamber of Secrets got it right. The acting is really good. By this point, the returning actors pretty much became the characters in my eyes, and Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint have some really funny banter. But the new actors like David Thewlis as Lupin and Gary Oldman as Sirius really make these characters come to life. This was also the first appearance of Sir Michael Gambon as Professor Dumbledore after the sad passing of Richard Harris. And honestly, I thought he was really good in this. Yeah, in the next film he had some questionable moments, but I thought he was really good here. As an adaptation, it's pretty good. I honestly don't get why so many book fans dislike it. There are a few things missing, like the Marauder's backstory and Crookshanks being a Kneazle, but for the most part it follows the book pretty well. I especially love the way they handled time travel, and again, the special effects and timing in that scene are excellent. The music is great. This would be the last Harry Potter film John Williams did the score for, and he went out on a high note. And again, it just looks incredible. It's probably the second best directed Potter film after Deathly Hallows Part 1. And man, the Dementors, how they move and the sounds they make, they're still haunting. Are there flaws? I can think of two. One, the tone can sometimes be a little clunky. I always think of that scene at the Whomping Willow. It always came off as kinda cartoonish, whereas the rest of the movie was more realistic as a movie about wizards can be. Like when Hermione grabs Harry's shirt. Doesn't that seem like something out of Looney Tunes? But the second, and by far my biggest problem, and you know if you saw my worst Harry Potter movie moments, is Ron. Now don't get me wrong, Rupert Grint is good and he has some funny lines, but he is useless in this movie. He adds absolutely nothing. Not one thing. And that would be bad enough, but almost every line he says is him being angry or afraid. And if I had to nitpick, the tone and look of the movie probably would have worked better if it was closer to the first two movies. The Goblet of Fire was the turning point. This movie was supposed to be like the other two, a nice lighthearted adventure with some dark elements. Now I don't mind that because it was done so well, but as an adaptation that would make more sense. So yeah, Prisoner of Azkaban is a fantastic movie. I love the look, I love the characters, and I love the story. For some people it's the best. I wouldn't go that far, but it is really great. I give it a 9 out of 10. It's actually the lowest grossing Potter film, and that's including Fantastic Beasts, but it still made a ton of money, which is more than I can say for Cuarón's next film, which also happens to be one of the greatest films I have ever seen. So join me tomorrow for that. Children of Men. Holy shit, is this movie good. It may be one of the most perfect movies I've ever seen. It's apparently based on a book which I haven't read, but this movie made me want to. It not only has so many elements going on, but it manages to pull all of them off really well. In 2027, humans have become infertile, and a baby hasn't been born in 18 years. In England, a man named Theo, played by Clive Owen, is asked by his estranged wife Julian, played by Julianne Moore, to help the first pregnant woman named Key, played by Claire Hope Ashity, to a sanctuary where she can have her baby, and bring hope for the future of mankind. So first, can we talk about how relevant this movie is? It came out in 2006, but some stuff in it is surprisingly timely for 2017, like how illegal immigration is treated and how each country has pretty much all become nationalists, and everyone only takes care of themselves. And as a result, surprise surprise, every country has gone to shit. It's almost like it was looking in on modern day. The acting is great, Clive Owen especially. There are several times where he has to act with only his face and he just pulls it off so well. The effects, everything in the movie looks real. And there was actually a lot more CG in this than you might think. And it only cost $76 million. Then there's the way this is directed. Alfonso Cuarón loves the one take, and in this movie he exploits the hell out of it. And it leads to some of the most thrilling action I have ever seen. And it really puts you in the moment. I felt like I was there. When I first saw this movie back in early 2013, when I saw the chase scene in the car, I hadn't been that enthralled in a long time.
Jesus! Shit.
Go, go, go. We're gonna make it. Come on, we're gonna make it.
Come on, come on.
Back up now!
Jesus!
But they even managed to make a slow car chase down a hill exciting. That is how well this movie is directed. But it's not just a style over substance movie. I already mentioned the immigration thing, but it also has themes of hope and religion. And the story itself is really well paced with characters I cared about and a clear goal that kept me invested. And it's all from Theo's point of view. Everything we see happens through his eyes. So to repeat, it has a good, strong story, thrilling action, fantastic direction, and themes to make analyzing the film more fun. It's mostly a sad film, but it also has some good comedy, most coming from Michael Caine, who I wish was in the movie more, and it does all of this in under 2 hours. Why did this bomb? Okay, I didn't go see it, but I was a dumb 13-year-old kid with no money. What was everyone else's excuse? If you haven't seen it, watch it. Trust me, you will find something to like. You may not enjoy everything, but you will like at least part of it. The only people I might caution are people who get anxiety really easily. 10 out of 10, one of the greatest movies I have ever seen. So tomorrow we wrap up Cuarón week with a film that wasn't based on a book and actually made a shit ton of money. See you then. Gravity. Can we just admire that this movie even got made? Think about it. Cuarón's movies had all pretty much either been small indie flicks or bombed at the box office unless they were based on a very popular book. So the fact that he was given $100 million to make a movie where it's basically just Sandra Bullock flying around space for an hour and a half is amazing to me. But here it is, and it is fantastic. The plot is very simple. Dr. Ryan Stone, played by Sandra Bullock, and Lieutenant Matt Kowalski, played by George Clooney, are working on the Space Shuttle Explorer when a missile strike on a defunct satellite has caused debris to smash into them. The rest of the crew is killed, and now they have to find a way to get back to Earth with no communication and a limited air supply. That's it. It's simple, but it works. This is one of those movies I like to call an oh fuck movie, in that it's mostly made up of scenes that will make you go oh fuck. Everything that can go wrong does, and I wouldn't be surprised if the working title was Torturing Sandra Bullock for an Hour and a Half in Space. I saw this movie in 3D, which I almost never do. In fact, to this day, it's one of only 2 movies I've seen in 3D, the other being Force Awakens. But it really added to the experience. Seeing this on the big screen with those 3D glasses on, I nearly broke the armrest because I was grabbing them so hard. This is one of the most thrilling movies I have ever seen. The action is so well directed with some great music and sound design. They managed to make me feel like I was actually there. Sometimes I had to shut my eyes when a character is about to hit something because it was just that realistic.
Can's empty. We're gonna hit hard. Grab a hold of anything you can.
There's There's so many long takes too. It actually takes about 13 minutes before the first cut of the movie. And the effects. I'm surprised this only cost $100 million. Every shot looks real and it's pretty much all computers. Hell, in some scenes the only thing real is Bullock and Clooney's faces. But there is more to it than just visuals. The acting is pretty good. Bullock really carries the movie and manages to take some scenes that may come across as corny or unintentionally hilarious and make them work. Clooney is charming as hell and provides some great laughs. The two characters themselves are pretty likable. Stone has a backstory that gives the movie some emotional weight, and the themes of religion and rebirth are very strong. But one thing I find underappreciated about this movie is that it brings up a really big issue, and that there's a lot of shit in orbit and needs to be cleaned up. In fact, they tried to earlier this year, but it didn't work. While the backlash isn't nearly as strong as I thought it would be, there are people who hate it simply because it made a lot of money, when the movie, to be fair, does have a pretty standard story. When something is this successful, a lot of people expect a totally original story. But it's a survival movie, and for me, the story was fine. The only other problem is that as great as it is, watching it on TV will never ever be as good as seeing it in the theaters. So I give it a 9 out of 10. If you easily get anxiety, maybe skip it, but if not, find as big a screen as you possibly can and give it a watch. So yeah, Alfonso Cuarón definitely prefers quality over quantity. He may not have made that many movies, but when he does, it's almost sure to be something special. When his worst movie is just okay, that's saying something. I'm looking forward to Roma, even if I do prefer his blockbusters, but I hope it's really good. And join me again next year for another retrospective on one of my favorite directors. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Bye.